Welcome, and thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We are incredibly excited to have you with us today.
We really are.
We're stepping back into a world that is equal parts magical, perilous, and frankly, just profoundly strange.
Very strange.
Yeah. We're returning to the heavy, ancient doors of Bloor's Academy. And for those of us who have spent time with these sources, we know that on the surface, it might look like a strict traditional boarding school.
Right. The gray walls, the drafty corridors.
Exactly, that very specific smell of ancient stone and chalk. But hidden within those walls and the shattered attics is a secret history that stretches back almost 1,000 years.
Which is just wild to think about.
It is. So today, our mission is to revisit the legacy of the Red King and his descendants. We're going to look closer at the terrifying and sometimes grotesque consequences of ancient magical power falling into the absolute wrong hands.
And we are going to explore, in a very visceral way, what it actually means to be completely erased from the visible world.
When you really sit down and reread these texts, the contrast is what hits you first, I think.
Oh, absolutely. We all remember the overarching plot, but looking at the granular details, it becomes glaringly apparent that this isn't a whimsical, lighthearted romp about children learning wand waves and potion recipes.
Not at all.
No, it's a deeply uncomfortable examination of generational trauma. It's about deep isolation and the heavy, crushing burden of inherited traits. The lore we're pulling from today spans centuries.
It's massive.
It begins with a 12th century African magician king, and it stretches all the way to a modern-day boy desperately trying to hide a yellow dog named Runner Bean from his terrifying grandmother.
The contrast there is just stark.
Yeah.
You have ancient, world-altering magic on one hand, and then the mundane struggles of a kid trying to survive the school week without getting detention.
Right. It's that friction between the mythic and the mundane.
I want you, listening right now, to put yourself back into that mindset for a second. Imagine discovering that the weirdest little quirk you possess.
Oh, this is a great thought experiment.
Yeah, think about it. Something you always thought was just a strange habit or an overactive imagination. Imagine that was actually an ancient, inherited superpower.
And not only that, but the moment you discover this power, you also realize there is an entire faction of terrifying, centuries-old relatives who want to weaponize you.
Right. How do you handle that?
Yeah.
Because that is the daily reality for the endowed children walking the halls of Bloor's Academy. Everything about their lives is dictated by a bloodline they literally didn't ask for.
And the origin of that bloodline is central to everything that happens in these halls. The sources trace it all back to the Red King.
The Magician King.
Exactly. The texts describe him as a king who left Africa in the 12th century, famously accompanied by 3 leopards.
Just a completely epic visual.
It really is. He was a figure of immense, almost incomprehensible power. And we have to talk about the artifacts he left behind, specifically the Time Twister.
Who the Time Twister?
The sources describe it as this marvelous glass sphere. But it wasn't just a trinket, you know. He placed his actual memories of his life and travels into it.
He used it to literally twist through time.
Right, visiting the past and the future. But the real enduring legacy he left behind wasn't physical artifacts at all. It was his bloodline. He had 10 children, and they passed down their unique powers through the generations, creating the families of the endowed.
And those powers didn't dilute over 1,000 years.
Not even a little bit.
That's what always blows my mind when re-examining this lore. They manifested in incredibly specific, highly volatile ways in the modern descendants at Bloor's. Just look at the roster of kids. You have Charlie Bone.
His power's fascinating.
It is. His power isn't throwing fireballs or something standard. He can literally hear the voices and conversations of people trapped inside photographs and paintings.
He can look at a Polaroid and hear what the people were saying the exact moment the shutter clicked.
Imagine walking past your family's photo wall and just hearing a cacophony of frozen conversations. It's so specific. And then you have Tancred Torson.
Oh, Tikik.
His Scandinavian ancestor was named after the thunder god Thor, and Tancred himself is a literal stormbringer.
Let's pause on Tancred for a moment, because the logistics of his power are just fascinating and terrifying. If he gets angry, he doesn't just yell like a normal kid.
The atmospheric pressure in the room literally drops.
Yes. You are suddenly dealing with gale force winds, rain, and actual lightning inside the school cafeteria.
Right. If he fails a math test, he causes a localized hurricane in the classroom.
It's a complete logistical nightmare for a school environment.
And then there's Lysander Sage, who is descended from an African wise man. He can call upon his spirit ancestors for protection and guidance. You can actually hear their drums when he summons them.
It's a very physical, auditory magic.
And of course, little Billy Raven. We'll talk a lot about Billy later, but he's an albino boy whose ancestor conversed with ravens on a gibbet and who can communicate with animals. It's this wildly diverse set of abilities, all crammed into one building.
The diversity of the powers isn't random, though. The sources make it clear that the endowments reflect the core personalities and the specific lineages of the children, and there is a deep, unbridgeable ideological divide among these endowed children.
It's essentially a Cold War.
It really is. You have one faction trying to use their gifts for good, or at least just trying to survive without causing harm. That includes Charlie, Emma who can fly, Fidelio, the musical prodigy, and Gabriel, who can physically feel the emotions and pasts of people just by touching their clothes.
Which, as a side note, sounds like an absolute sensory nightmare for a teenager.
Oh, a complete nightmare. Going to a thrift store would be agonizing. But then look at the opposing faction. You have Manfred Bloor, the head boy, who is a terrifyingly powerful hypnotist. He is descended from the Red King's cruelest son, Borlath.
Borlath is just the worst.
Truly. And you have Asa Pike, a whir beast who physically shifts into a foul creature at dusk. Zelda Dubinsky, who uses telekinesis for just petty cruelty. This divide isn't a schoolyard rivalry over who gets the best table at lunch. It's the continuation of an ancient, blood-soaked family feud playing out in a modern educational setting.
And sitting right on top of this powder keg is Dr. Bloor, the headmaster.
Yeah.
The irony here is,
It's palpable.
Dr. Bloor himself isn't endowed. He doesn't have a single magical bone in his body. Yet he acts as this iron-fisted warden over a bunch of demigods.
He's terrified of the magic getting out of control.
Exactly. And not because he cares about the safety of the children, but because the Bloor family has maintained a masquerade for 1,000 years.
Yeah.
They live right in the middle of a bustling modern city, and he is obsessed with keeping their alchemy, their shape-shifting, and their apparitions completely secret from the mundane world right outside the school gates.
The sociological impact of this hidden society is staggering. If you think about it, what happens when you take raw ancestral magic and try to suppress it with math tests and school plays?
You create an absolute pressure cooker.
Yes. In a normal high school, a teenager with a grudge might spread a nasty rumor. At Bloor's academy, a teenager with a grudge might hypnotize a teacher into a permanent waking coma. The stakes of every single interpersonal interaction are raised to a lethal degree.
It's completely unsustainable.
The authority figures are either suppressing the magic through fear and punishment or actively exploiting the children's powers for their own political gain within the family structure.
So these kids are constantly navigating a minefield. And nowhere is that danger more visceral than in the story of the Blue Boa. We all remember the boa, but looking closely at its origins reveals so much about how power corrupts in this universe.
The history of the Blue Boa is a perfect microcosm of the overarching tragedy of the Red King's legacy.
It really is.
Originally, the sources tell us, the boa was a rare snake, black and silver, brought out of Africa by the Red King himself. It wasn't a monster. It was a companion, a vigilant guardian, and a wise counselor to the king.
The king could speak its language and loved it deeply.
Exactly. But we mentioned Borlath earlier, the king's cruelest son. While the king was away, Borlath caught the boa in a net, and Borlath was sadistic. He spent an entire week torturing this wise, gentle creature until he completely broke its mind.
It's so disturbing.
He turned a counselor into a creature that lived only to kill. It would wrap around its victims and squeeze them into oblivion.
It's just a brutal violation of something pure. And then the king's daughter, Guanamara, tried to save it. She rescued the tortured snake and cast a spell to try and cure the madness Borlath had inflicted.
But magic in this universe is finicky and dangerous?
It never goes exactly as planned. Her spell was too late. It didn't cure the boa's madness, it only altered the outcome of the violence. Her spell weakened the snake's fatal hug. So instead of dying when the boa squeezed them, the victims suffered a completely different, arguably worse fate.
They became entirely invisible.
Fast forward to the present day at Bloor's Academy, and we see the devastating reality of this ancient, botched spell through Ollie Sparks.
Poor Ollie.
Ollie was just a student who got too curious. He went up into the forbidden attics and was attacked by this very same Blue Boa, which had been revived by the ancient, evil Ezekiel Bloor.
The specific details of Ollie's condition are where the true horror lies. The text notes that the boa squeezed him, but it missed a tiny portion of his body.
His big toe.
His big toe. So now Ollie Sparks is entirely invisible, trapped in the shadowy, maze-like attics of the school, except for a small pink toe that just floats in the air.
That visual is just burned into my brain.
He wears no clothes because any clothes he puts on also become invisible, which makes him freezing cold all the time. He is completely isolated.
We really need to unpack the psychological toll of being unseen like that. In modern pop culture, if a character finds a cloak of invisibility or drinks a potion, it's framed as an incredible superpower.
Right, you can sneak around, pull pranks, act as a spy, uncover secrets.
But the narrative here completely subverts that trope. Invisibility is not a tool here. It is an agonizing curse of profound isolation. Ollie tells Charlie and Emma that he actually tried to escape once.
I remember that.
But because no one could see him, people just walked right into him. They knocked him down in the corridors. When they felt a physical body but couldn't see a person, they screamed in absolute terror. He literally couldn't navigate the world because the world looked right through him, and his presence only caused panic.
It's the ultimate erasure of a person. You are alive, you are breathing, but you don't exist to anyone else.
Ollie retreated back to his attic prison because it was the only place he felt safe from the terror of the outside world. And how do his captors, like Manfred Bloor, deal with him?
They feed him jam.
They bring him jars of nice jam just to keep him quiet, complacent, and contained. It is a terrifying depiction of imprisonment. The prison bars aren't made of iron. They are made of his own lack of physical presence.
It's a literal erasure of identity. Ollie is stripped of his physical form, his agency, and his connection to the community. He's been erased from existence while remaining completely conscious of his erasure.
How long could you maintain your sanity in that attic? For the listener, just imagine sitting alone, freezing, eating jam, knowing the world is right downstairs and you can never rejoin it.
It's deeply unsettling.
It really is. But while Ollie has completely lost his physical form against his will, we see the dark mirror to that elsewhere in the Academy. There is another character who actively manipulates her physical form to steal identities, infiltrate, and cause chaos.
Oh, we have to talk about Belle.
We all know who I'm talking about, and reading her scenes again genuinely sent shivers down my spine. Belle is terrifying.
Belle is the ultimate manifestation of the deception of appearances in this universe. She is introduced to the school as a supposedly young, beautiful new girl. She has golden curls, a dazzling smile, and immediately charms the faculty.
Everyone just falls over themselves for her.
But Charlie notices something deeply unnerving about her right away. Her eyes. They constantly change color. One moment they are bright blue, then they shift to green, then a grayish-brown, then violet.
It's so creepy.
It's an outward, uncontrollable symptom of her true, unstable nature.
Because Belle is not a child at all. She is Yolanda. She is an ancient, deeply evil shapeshifter from the soot-gray U-beam castle.
The texts note she was born in the year 1900.
So she is well over 100 years old, masquerading as a middle schooler, and she has come to the Academy specifically to aid the villainous centenarian, Ezekiel Bloor, and Yolanda happens to be Charlie's great-aunt, which just adds a whole layer of twisted, toxic family dynamics to the situation.
To really understand the threat Yolanda poses, we have to look closely at the harrowing confrontation that takes place in the entrance hall of the school.
Oh, this scene is incredible.
It's late at night, the school is dark. Belle is confronted by Mr. Moldova. Now, we know Mr. Moldova is the art teacher, but he has a secret identity of his own.
Right, who is actually Samuel Sparks.
The older brother of the invisible Ollie Sparks. He infiltrated the school under a false name specifically to find his missing brother. When he corners Belle in the hall, she drops the act entirely. Right in front of a hidden witness, she shifts from this pretty blonde young girl into her true form.
And it is horrific.
An ancient, towering, yellow-skinned hag with a crag of a nose and white hair drizzling into her golden curls.
The visual of that transformation is pure gothic horror. And the magic duel that follows is a masterclass in how this universe handled the power. Samuel Sparks isn't just an art teacher. He is endowed.
He possesses a very rare talent.
He can make certain stones heat up until they explode into fierce red sparks and fire. He throws these burning stones at Yolanda, and for a second, it seems he might actually win. Her clothing begins to smolder.
But Yolanda has a secondary endowment inherited from her mother. She isn't just a shapeshifter. She is a profoundly powerful hypnotist.
The physical fight is entirely secondary to the psychological one here.
Exactly. She locks eyes with Samuel, and with a single chilling stare, she completely wipes his identity. She doesn't knock him out. She doesn't kill him. She hollows out his mind.
It's devastating. He literally stops in his tracks. All the fire dies out of the stones. When Billy Raven, the little boy who is secretly watching from the shadows when he approaches Mr. Moldova to hand him his beloved pet rat, Rembrandt, the art teacher just looks at him with a blank, empty stare.
He doesn't recognize the rat he loved.
No. He doesn't know who he is, why he is standing in the dark entrance hall, or that he spent months searching for his invisible brother. Yolanda defeated him by erasing the very essence of who he was.
That kind of memory loss isn't isolated, though. It highlights a recurring, horrific tactic used by the villains in this lore. We see it echoed in the tragedy of Charlie's own father, Lyell.
Right, years earlier.
Lyell was put into a permanent trance by Manfred Bloor. It's a state from which he cannot wake, effectively erasing him from his family's life while keeping his body alive. Yolanda's attack on Samuel is a continuation of this.
The villains here don't need to commit murder. They obliterate their enemies' minds, turning them into docile blank slates.
It is a fate arguably worse than death, because the body remains as a monument to the person who was lost.
Put yourself in the shoes of a student living away from home in this drafty, creepy castle of a school. The sheer paranoia this environment breeds is unimaginable. If a 100-year-old evil witch can masquerade seamlessly as a cute tween girl sitting next to you in art class, how can you ever trust your own senses?
You really can't.
How do you know that the teacher giving you detention or the kid passing you notes is actually who they say they are? The psychological warfare is constant. You are completely isolated because trusting the wrong person could result in your mind being wiped clean.
That atmosphere of intense paranoia and lost identity is what makes the situation of the youngest spy at Bloor's Academy so tragic. We have to look at Billy Raven.
We do.
Because Billy is navigating this terrifying world with absolutely no armor.
Billy Raven breaks my heart every time I revisit these texts. He is an 8-year-old albino boy. He has snow-white hair and dark red eyes that look constantly surprised behind his glasses.
He's so small compared to everything happening around him.
He was orphaned when he was just a baby, completely alone in the world, and eventually he was dumped at Bloor's. Because he has nowhere else to go, no family to check on him or protect him, he is entirely at the mercy of the school's administration.
And his endowment makes him incredibly valuable and therefore incredibly vulnerable.
He can communicate with animals. They don't just squeak or bark. They talk to him as clearly as we are talking right now.
And because he is so vulnerable, Billy is entirely manipulated by the corrupt authority figures, specifically Manfred and the ancient Ezekiel Bloor. They know he is desperate for love, for a home, for any semblance of a family.
So they force him to act as their spy.
They demand he report back to them on what Charlie and the other endowed children are planning. And what do they offer an 8-year-old in return for betraying his peers?
False promises.
False promises.
Yeah.
Ezekiel constantly dangles the prospect of being adopted by kind parents, a prospect he absolutely has no intention of fulfilling. It's a cruel, calculated exploitation of a child's deepest vulnerability.
The narrative gives us this heart-wrenching scene on Billy's 8th birthday. It's a Sunday, the school is mostly empty, and no human remembers his birthday. Not a single person says a word to him.
That is just crushing.
But Billy knows it's his birthday, and the animals know. He ends up wandering down to the kitchens and talking to Blessed, an old, fat dog who works with the cook.
And it's Blessed who actually reveals to Billy the terrifying truth about the school. The dog tells Billy that he was attacked by the Blue Boa in the past.
The invisible snake.
Right, the snake squeezed the dog's tail, and now all that's left is a tiny pink stub that vanished. The animals hold the history of the school's atrocities. Later, Billy inherits Rembrandt, the highly intelligent black rat that belonged to Mr. Moldova before his mind was wiped.
Rembrandt is such a great character.
Rembrandt becomes Billy's closest confidant. He sleeps under Billy's sweater, keeping him warm, and whispers the school's darkest secrets to him.
Looking at Billy's moral gray area is fascinating. He isn't inherently evil. He isn't malicious like Manfred or Asa. He is simply a desperately lonely, frightened child being coerced by abusive adults who hold all the power over his entire future.
What stands out here is the role of the animals. In a universe where humans are constantly shape-shifting, lying, hypnotizing, and erasing each other's memories, the animals act as the ultimate truth-tellers.
They're the only ones you can trust.
Exactly. The humans obscure reality to serve their agendas, but the dogs, rats, and mice see the world with absolute clarity. Rembrandt the rat tells Billy exactly what is going on. He pierces through the deception that the adult humans maintain. The animals are the only reliable narrators in Bloor's Academy.
But there is a glimmer of hope for Billy amidst all this manipulation, and it comes from a very unexpected place. Down in the underground dining hall, Billy discovers that someone human did remember his birthday.
The cook.
The cook. She steps out of her kitchen and presents him with a large iced cake with 8 flaming candles. This isn't just a sweet maternal gesture. It hints at the broader hidden architecture of the school.
Cook lives in a secret underground apartment beneath the academy, guarded by Blessed the dog.
She knows about the evil of the Bloors. She is part of a larger hidden network of good adults fighting a covert war from within the school's own walls. She looks at this manipulated orphan and promises him that if the Bloors don't find him parents, she will.
That covert war is a crucial element of the narrative. The children aren't entirely alone, even if they often feel like they are. There are adults actively trying to intervene, trying to break the Bloor's stranglehold on the city and the endowed children.
But as we see time and time again in these sources, adult intervention comes at a tremendous, often physical cost.
Which brings us perfectly to Charlie's great-uncle Peyton.
Peyton is such a fantastic, complex character. He is Charlie's favorite relative, and for good reason. The rest of the U-Beam family, Grandma Bone, and those 3 awful great aunts, they are miserable, toxic people who just want to use Charlie.
But Peyton is a true ally.
His endowment is that he is a power booster. Basically, his internal energy is so high that if he looks at a light bulb or a street lamp, his energy causes the glass to shatter and explode.
Which is incredibly inconvenient.
Extremely. Because of this, he lives a very restricted life. He usually only leaves the house at night, wearing dark glasses to protect the city's infrastructure. He's this eccentric, protective, nocturnal figure, but when he overhears his wicked sisters plotting to bring the dangerous Yolanda to the city, he decides he has to act.
He embarks on a solo mission, sneaking off to the soot-gray U-Beam castle to stop them.
And this is where the true, dangerous mechanics of the magic system are laid bare. Peyton's intervention is an absolute catastrophic disaster.
He returns from U-Beam Castle completely broken. The sources describe his physical transformation vividly, and it's shocking. His once luxurious jet-black hair is turned entirely ash-gray overnight.
He aged decades in a single night.
He is lying in his bed in a death-like stupor, his face white as carved ice, completely drained of all vitality. When he finally musters the strength to speak to Charlie, the backstory he shares is haunting.
It is deeply traumatic. Peyton tells Charlie about visiting U-Beam Castle when he was just 7 years old. He reveals that his own mother, Charlie's great-grandmother, was murdered by Yolanda.
Yolanda pushed her down a treacherous stone stairway.
Because she wanted to control the young, magically endowed Peyton. That trauma has defined Peyton's entire life. And now, decades later, having faced Yolanda or whatever dark forces reside in that castle again, he tells Charlie something deeply disturbing about the nature of their reality.
He says that when you lose your magical talent, you lose a piece of your soul.
We really have to analyze the physical and emotional toll of magic in this universe. Magic here is not a free, limitless resource like mana in a video game. It is tied directly to the life force, the blood, and the essence of the wielder.
It exacts a heavy price. Peyton's current state, where he is so drained that his grandmother can turn on a bright, naked overhead light in his room and he cannot summon even a single spark to explode. It represents a profound emasculation and a literal loss of self.
His power, which defined his life, dictated his schedule, and caused his isolation, has been violently ripped away, leaving him hollowed out.
He tells Charlie he feels whipped and cleaned out.
Peyton is experiencing an extreme, magical version of something we see every day in the real world. The sheer exhaustion of trying to fix a toxic system from the inside.
That's a very apt parallel.
For the listener, have you ever poured so much of your unique energy, your passion, your specific talents into fighting a toxic work environment or trying to fix a deeply broken, abusive family dynamic that you eventually just hit a wall?
You wake up one day and realize you are entirely drained of the very spark that makes you, you.
You are just hollow. That is exactly what Uncle Peyton is experiencing. He poured his literal life force into fighting the toxicity of his own family, and it broke him.
And the narrative consequence of Peyton's fall is immediate. With the protective adults incapacitated, Uncle Peyton bedridden and drained, and Mr. Moldova's mind entirely erased by Yolanda, the responsibility falls squarely back onto the shoulders of the children.
The safety net is gone.
They are forced to take desperate, highly dangerous measures to try and fix the escalating chaos. And we see exactly how dangerous good intentions can be when they manifest through the acts of carving and painting.
With Ollie still trapped and completely invisible in the attics, the kids are desperate. They come up with 2 incredibly risky plans. First, we have Lysander Sage. Lysander decides to use his endowment in a deeply empathetic, creative way.
He sneaks into the sculpture room late at night.
Right. Under the light of the stars coming through the windows, he attempts to carve a perfect, life-sized wooden likeness of Ollie Sparks. He pours his heart, his memory, and his soul into making it as accurate as possible.
Believing that if his spirit ancestors can see what Ollie's supposed to look like, they can use their ancient power to give the invisible boy his physical body back.
It is a beautiful, deeply moving act of creation. Lysander is using his connection to the past, not for combat or defense, but for healing and restoration. He's trying to build a bridge back to the physical world for Ollie.
However, the tragedy of this universe is that acts of creation are constantly threatened by petty destruction.
The villains, Belle and her crony Dorcas, discover the wooden carving. And they don't just break it. They drag it out into the school gardens, build a bonfire, and burn it.
When Lysander and his friends find the remains the next morning, all that is left among the scorched twigs and gray ashes are the two painted blue eyes staring up at them.
It is a crushing defeat. It is an act of petty, calculated malice designed specifically to destroy an act of pure empathy.
Lysander is physically sickened by it. You can hear the angry, rhythmic drums of his ancestors pounding in his head, demanding retribution.
But while Lysander was trying to thoughtfully build something, Charlie was taking a much more reckless approach to the Ollie problem.
Very reckless.
Charlie decides to use a burned magical wand he found to literally dive into a painting. Earlier in the story, he acquired an old painting of an ancient medieval sorcerer named Scarpo.
Charlie projects his consciousness, his mind, into the two-dimensional world of the painting to find Scarpo and ask if the ancient sorcerer knows a cure for invisibility.
This is where we see the catastrophic consequences of acting without fully understanding the rules of magical engagement. Charlie's act is born of desperate recklessness.
He goes into the painting, but Scarpo isn't some helpful guide. Scarpo is hostile. Scarpo realizes that this boy from the future has created a bridge, and he has a chance to escape his two-dimensional prison.
Scarpo physically grabs onto Charlie. When Charlie panics and pulls himself backward out of the painting, he inadvertently drags the living, breathing essence of a medieval sorcerer, along with a small brown mouse that was hiding in Scarpo's pocket, right out of the canvas and into his 21st century bedroom.
It's a complete catastrophe. He pulls a man from the Middle Ages into a house with electricity and cars outside.
When Charlie confesses what he's done to Uncle Peyton, Peyton, even in his weakened state, is absolutely horrified.
Peyton's horror is rooted in the mechanics of the magic. He explains to Charlie the vital difference between an image and an essence.
Right, because the painting isn't blank now.
Exactly. If you look at the canvas after Charlie's mistake, the painted figure of Scarpo is still there. The physical image remains on the wood. But the essence of the man, his mischief, his ancient magic, his capacity for mayhem, his actual life force and consciousness has been ripped out and dragged into the modern world.
It demonstrates that in a highly magical environment, acting without thinking, even if your intentions are purely to help an invisible friend, can cause catastrophic collateral damage. Charlie just wanted to ask a medical question, and instead he unleashed a weapon of mass disruption upon the city.
Oh, and what a disruption it is. Sparing no detail, we have to talk about the sheer, unadulterated magical mayhem Scarpo unleashes upon the mundane world. It is simultaneously terrifying and hilarious.
Consider it from Scarpo's perspective. He is a sorcerer from the Middle Ages. Suddenly, he is loose in a modern, bustling city. He is completely overwhelmed by the sensory input.
The electric lights are blinding, the roar of combustion engines is deafening, the synthetic materials are alien to him. The sheer scale of the modern world is terrifying.
And how does an ancient, immensely powerful sorcerer react to being overwhelmed and terrified? He doesn't hide quietly. He lashes out with chaotic, wide-scale, uncontrollable magic.
The sources list the bizarre plagues that hit the city, and it reads like a fever dream.
I love these details. First, during the school's afternoon break, the sky above the city turns this lurid, unnatural purple, then deep indigo, and finally pitch black in the middle of the day.
And then it starts raining frogs and slimy toads right out of the sky onto the school garden.
Zelda Dubinsky, the nasty telekinetic girl, literally gets hit on the head with a falling toad. But the plagues don't stop there. The massive cathedral bells in the center of the city and the bells in 5 other churches across the district begin ringing endlessly on their own.
The heavy ropes are just rising and falling with no human hands pulling them.
Down in the school cafeteria, a lunch lady is traumatized because a live, rampaging, full-grown bull suddenly appears inside a local butcher shop where sides of beef were hanging.
It's absolute pandemonium.
In the school's music room, Mr. Pilgrim, the sad piano teacher, is playing a Beethoven sonata, and suddenly all the black notes on his sheet music turn to solid, heavy gold. Even the live bats and the spiders living in the dark corners of the music room turn into living, golden statues that drop to the floor.
And my absolute favorite, the most absurd detail of all.
A literal, full-sized elephant appears on the pristine school lawn, trumpets, and then is turned completely invisible.
It is absolute, unfiltered chaos, and it is darkly comedic, but the comedy highlights a very serious conflict for the villains. Let's look at Dr. Bloor's reaction to all of this.
He summons Charlie to his shadowy book-lined study.
Now, Dr. Bloor isn't furious about the magic itself. He has a room full of ancient alchemical texts, strange artifacts, and literal skeletons. He is furious because the masquerade has been broken.
He screams at Charlie that the Bloor family has spent 1,000 years keeping their peculiarities a secret. For a millennium, they have never let the magic impinge upon the mundane city.
Now, there are massive traffic accidents because the sky went dark at noon, the police and fire engines are wailing through the streets, and there are golden bats on the floorboards.
Dr. Bloor corners Charlie and threatens him with the ultimate punishment. He heavily implies he will make Charlie disappear permanently, just like he did to Charlie's father, Lyle, if Charlie doesn't find the sorcerer and clean up the mess by 9:00 a.m. the very next morning.
You really have to stop and consider the sheer logistical nightmare of cleaning up this level of magic. Dr. Bloor has to maintain the illusion of a normal, prestigious academy to the outside world.
Think about the groundskeeper, Mr. Whedon. Whedon's a rough, mean, unpleasant guy, but you almost feel a pang of sympathy for him here.
He is out there complaining bitterly because while the elephant was turned invisible, its massive footprints and its very physical dung were not.
So he is stuck out on the pristine school lawns, shoveling invisible elephant dung while trying to catch slippery, raining frogs in a net. It is the perfect, absurd clash of high fantasy with the grueling, unsung realities of mundane, bureaucratic life.
It perfectly highlights the absurdity of trying to contain ancient, wild chaos within modern bureaucratic structures. But for Charlie, the comedy is entirely lost. He is on a ticking clock.
His life, or at least his freedom and his mind, are literally on the line. He has a matter of hours to track down a terrified, unpredictable medieval sorcerer who could turn him into a golden statue with a stray thought.
Which leads us to the climax of this incredible mess. With the clock ticking down, Charlie finally manages to track Scarpo down.
And he finds him in the most pathetic, unexpected state. Scarpo isn't standing on a rooftop hurling lightning. He is hiding in the cook's underground broom closet.
The great medieval sorcerer is crouching among the wet mops, the buckets, and the dustpans, absolutely weeping.
He is terrified of the 21st century, and he actually wants to go back into the quiet, predictable, two-dimensional world of his painting. Charlie manages to sneak him out of the school, gets him back to his bedroom at number 9 Filbert Street, and they set up the old canvas.
It should be a simple solution. Scarpo wants to go in, Charlie wants him in. But this is where the hard magic rules of this universe aggressively assert themselves. Magic isn't just wishing, it has physics.
Charlie physically pushes Scarpo toward the canvas. Scarpo leans in, but they violently bounce off. They are repelled by an invisible barrier and hit the bedroom floor hard.
The sorcerer throws off his robe, points an angry, trembling finger at Charlie, and screams one word.
Moozy.
Moosey, yes. The little brown mouse.
When Charlie fell backward out of the painting originally, the ancient brown mouse that lived in Scarpo's pocket fell out too. And that mouse got scared by Rembrandt the rat and scurried down a dark hole under the floorboards of Charlie's house.
It's a brilliant narrative twist that establishes a strict magical law in this universe. The law of equivalent exchange, or a magical conservation of mass. To re-enter the two-dimensional plane of the painting, the exact mass and the exact components that exited must return together at the exact same time.
Because the tiny mouse is missing from the equation, the spell entirely fails.
The immensely powerful sorcerer is physically stranded in the modern era, unable to cross the threshold until the missing variable is found.
The tension this creates is just incredible. Think about the setup of this climax. You have an exhausted, magically drained Uncle Peyton lying in bed, barely able to speak. He has to use a modern, mundane cell phone to call up his eccentric friend, Mr. Onimus.
He asks Mr. Onimus to immediately bring the flames.
Now, the flames aren't magical fire. There are 3 extraordinary cats, 1 orange, 1 yellow, 1 copper. So the resolution of this massive citywide magical crisis relies entirely on three cats being deployed to hunt down a medieval magical mouse hidden under the floorboards of an old house.
Also, a weeping sorcerer can get back into a painting before an evil headmaster can erase a boy's mind at 9 a.m.
It is this perfectly bizarre, high-stakes blending of ancient sorcery and mundane modern problem-solving.
It perfectly synthesizes the tone of the entire narrative. The grand, sweeping magic always comes down to these small, intimate, often messy details. As we begin to wrap up the threads of this deep dive, it's clear that the source material we've explored today is much more than a simple fantasy adventure about a magical boarding school.
It is a profound, often dark study of isolation and power.
We see how unchecked power isolates people in horrifying, literal ways. Ollie Sparks trapped in his invisible state, crying in the cold. Uncle Peyton drained to an ash-gray husk by the cruelty of his own family.
Samuel Sparks walking around the halls with an erased mind. And even Scarpo the sorcerer, terrifyingly powerful but weeping in a broom closet because he cannot handle the noise of the modern world.
But the flip side of that isolation is where the true strength in this universe lies. The real power, the power that actually saves the day, doesn't come from ancient bloodlines, shape-shifting, or dark magic.
It comes from unexpected, compassionate alliances. It comes from orphans like Billy Raisin, finding the courage to tell the truth to a rat. It comes from a cook running a secret underground safe haven for forgotten children.
It comes from the fierce loyalty of ordinary animals, rats like Rembrandt, dogs like Blessed and Runnerbean, and 3 colorful cats.
The villains in this lore, Yolanda, Ezekiel, Manfred, they seek to divide, to hypnotize, to erase, and to control. They use their legacy to dominate.
The heroes, flawed, frightened, and often reckless as they are, seek to connect, to remember, and to restore what was lost.
And that's what I want you to take away from this. You might not have to worry about a shape-shifting great aunt turning into a yellow-skinned hag in your hallway, or a medieval sorcerer turning your neighborhood's spiders into solid gold.
Probably not.
Probably not. But the core struggles we've talked about today are incredibly real and universally relatable, protecting your sense of identity in a world or an institution that wants you to conform.
Fighting back against toxic environments, whether that's a bad workplace or a deeply difficult family dynamic.
And understanding the heavy, very real, sometimes exhausting cost of standing up to do the right thing. Those are battles we all fight, with or without a magic wand.
Before we sign off, I want to leave you with a final, lingering thought to mull over. We began today by talking about the Red King and his time twister, the glass sphere where he meticulously locked away his memory so he could travel through time.
He did it out of a desire to preserve his legacy, to hold on to his past, to ensure he wasn't forgotten.
But as we've seen time and time again throughout this deep dive, preserving the past, especially a dark or violent past, can effectively trap the future. It creates endless cycles of trauma and revenge. So ask yourself, if you had a glass sphere that could genuinely twist time, would you use it to revisit your greatest mistakes, hoping to fix them? Or would you be too terrified of the chaotic, unpredictable consequences you might drag back into your present?
Oh, that is a heavy, brilliant question to end on. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the sources today. We hope we've given you a lot to think about, a few surprising laughs, and maybe a very good reason to keep a closer eye on the mice in your house. Keep questioning the world around you, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive.